Good morning, everybody. It is Friday, June 14th, and welcome to a cozy little corner in my spa. Right now, I am going to read June's story. This is June. I'm not exactly sure where to start. I told a friend today I wasn't going to meetings anymore. This is the first person outside of my immediate circle of 2 or 3 I've told. We aren't particularly close, but she was going through a hard time and trusted me with sensitive information, and I thought I could be honest with her as well, so I confided. The first person I openly told about my doubts and concerns. It's been almost 3 hours since I sent that message, and still no response. We had been emailing back and forth for maybe an hour, and I don't think it's a coincidence that she stopped responding. Why is it so hard to come out when you don't want to be in anymore? Why is that rejection so debilitating? Why am I almost instantly sunk into a depression? So here's my story, as anonymous as possible. I was raised as a Jehovah's Witness, as my mom was found in the territory and baptized when I was a year old. My dad never became a witness and passed away unexpectedly from a heart attack when I was 13 years old. I longed for the day I would see him again, but until that time my heart had a hole that would never be healed. Time passed. I married at 20 and had 2 kids by 27. My husband and I had been married for 9 years when we hit a very rough patch. We separated, he was disfellowshipped, and life was the hardest it had ever been for almost a year. We started dating, forgave, and attempted to move forward. We attended meetings together for almost a year and a half, and he attempted to get reinstated after doing a total 180 from his initial sin. During this time, I became inactive. Was I ever pulled aside and given counsel and encouragement? I mean, there was the occasional, "How are you doing?" and my forced smile in response of, "Doing okay," was returned with a handshake and a smile, and that's all. I forced myself to go to the meetings early and stay a few minutes after with the kids, while my disfellowshipped husband sat alone in the parking lot. This was hindering me from being able to move on from what had happened and a constant reminder of the fact that we couldn't just be a normal couple. I wasn't invited anywhere, and my husband and our 2 small children were isolated and lonely, at a time when we needed love, support, and acceptance. We needed people. We needed family. We needed our community, the only one we had ever known. I begged and sobbed for the elders to help. I prayed and sobbed some more to the God I was taught cared about me and loved me. Specifically, I prayed to know He was there and cared about me. My prayers were not answered. We were always told to be specific. I mean, if He could send publishers to a door 10 minutes after someone in the territory was praying, why couldn't I get a phone call or a text from anyone? I'd even take a wrong number or a butt dial as proof of His existence. My husband met with the elders and asked for help with his own doubts. He asked for personal experiences of how these men had such strong faith, because obviously he knew all the facts and it wasn't enough. He was told to do research, read the Bible, and look at the online library. And that was the extent of the help they could provide until he was reinstated. He had questioned and had doubts most of his life, starting as a child. My childhood was different. Because I lost my dad at a young age, I never questioned if I would see him again. I never let a doubt cross my mind. I read the fine print. I followed all the rules. No swearing, no rated R movies, etc. I was a good little Jehovah's Witness. I pioneered during my senior year of high school. I didn't go to college. I found a part-time job to support myself, and I always tried to do what was right. I got married, pioneered again for a few years until the babies came, and tried to reach out whenever possible. When this shakeup happened and my husband started talking about his doubts, yikes. At first I thought, I am not supposed to talk about spiritual things with you. You're disfellowshipped. But then there was also the feeling that I had to be a supportive wife and listen and try to help with those doubts. It was hard to hear all the things he talked about as he did more research. He wanted to find real answers to his questions, not just accept what Jehovah's Witnesses had in their articles that we'd been reading all our lives. After all, where did they find the answers that they put in their Watchtower articles? If they found it, why couldn't we? So the documentary started being watched, books being read, and his findings were shared with me. He started getting very passionate in the opposite direction that I hoped for. I felt the need to defend the Bible and Jehovah's Witnesses with all the regurgitated knowledge I'd known my entire life. Over time, though, I watched the footage on YouTube from the Australian Royal Commission. I could not believe how evasive Jeffrey Jackson was being. "I'm not an expert in that area. I don't know the answer to that." Really? I am a lowly publisher, and I know the answer to that. And then when he mentioned that someone could just fade off without any repercussions, I thought, huh? Okay. Watching that video was the start of waking up for me. I should probably watch it again. It's been a while. Listening to straight courtroom interviews with what I thought of as skewed news reporters at the time was huge for me. I remember watching that video and just sitting in shock when it was over. I should also say that I have a terrible memory and the actual order of events might differ a little, but more documentaries came into my life and each one allowed me to open up my limiting views and allow myself to start thinking differently. This was a long process and did not happen overnight. I still had feelings of guilt with each one I watched. It had been so ingrained in me that we don't watch those videos. The control was real. I watched the Leah Remini Scientology Jehovah's Witness special. I remember thinking that all of those interviewed would be considered apostates, and a few months earlier I wouldn't have been able to even allow myself to watch it. But after viewing it, I remember thinking they were just normal people, normal humans with the same emotions and feelings I had. Why should I feel the need to label them and ignore what they have to say? They were not the evil humans that Watchtower uses as a scare tactic to prevent people from listening to him. I had a real fear of apostates when I was growing up, and that fear shifted to not wanting to be labeled an apostate myself as I started to question things. Honestly, when you read the definition of an apostate, it's just someone that has abandoned a religious belief, but the witnesses make it such a derogatory term. They put that fear that if you leave, that's what you will be. It is terrible, and I fell victim to that. I probably still fall victim to that, if I'm being honest. I started allowing myself to watch other documentaries. I started being more open when my husband would share what he had read. I still had feelings of, what if? What if Jehovah's Witnesses is true? I was so confused about how I was so devout most of my life, how I planned on raising my children this way. What would life look like without this religion telling me what to do? What would this mean for my beloved family and friends that were still Jehovah's Witnesses? Over time, confusion turned to frustration and even anger. We had a conversation with my husband's parents. His father is a longtime elder. We didn't intend to discuss any religion, but to discuss necessary family business in hopes of healing some childhood trauma that my husband experienced. But it came up and the issue of child abuse came up. You see, years earlier, prior to my husband's disfellowshipping, we discovered that a brother in our congregation had been disfellowshipped, arrested, and criminally prosecuted for child pornography on his computer. We were not in the congregation at the time this had all happened. This brother had taken a small interest in our young boys after he had been reinstated. We thought it was nice that he was always saying hi and giving them attention. Then we were alerted by a family member of this man about his past. We were horrified. Why hadn't the elders told us this? Why weren't they keeping an eye on his interactions with minors and letting him know how inappropriate that was? So this came up during the talk with my in-laws. My father-in-law's response? He went and pulled out the Jehovah's Witness scripturally based position on child protection packet that had been revised a few months earlier and proceeded to dogmatically read it to us. But why weren't we told about this brother's behavior? Why weren't our children protected? He didn't have an answer. I believe he said that we should have been, and that the elders were wrong not to tell us. The whole conversation did not go well. It got intense and heated several times, and I tried to keep things neutral and calm. But when that came up, the mama bear in me came out. I was still calm, but my voice raised, and I wanted to know why my children were not being protected. This was another game changer for me. I always thought that the congregation was the safest place for my kids. That was very naive of me to think, and I hope I never make that mistake presuming my children are safe because someone tells me they are. Due diligence in all areas of life is necessary when it comes to protecting our kids. We were kicked out of the house after that conversation with my in-laws by my father-in-law. I wrote a letter to him the next day during the Watchtower study. The article was talking about being encouraging and how we cannot be masters of others' faith. My father-in-law was very upset that my husband had doubts, and he was sharing them. He just wanted him to believe and not question. He reverted to the exact emotional abuse that he had put my husband through as a teenager, only this time, instead of hearing the stories, I saw it through my own eyes. I called him out on this behavior in the letter. As of now, I haven't sent the letter, but I feel I probably should. He needs to know as an elder, as a father, as a human being that his behavior was inappropriate and completely unacceptable. We have gone as far as to refer him by his first name only. Okay, so shortly after this conversation, we moved across the country for a fresh start. This had been in the works for over a year, and we were finally doing it. We needed it. We decided we would no longer attend meetings in our fresh start, and that we would live a normal life for our kids. This has included celebrating birthdays and holidays. I remember watching a certain documentary and seeing a young ex-JW couple celebrating Christmas, and I thought, why? I wouldn't do that. It's a religious holiday. But as the holiday season approached and we were surrounded with new friends and some normal family members, parentheses, we don't use the word worldly anymore, they're just normal people, we saw the reason for the season. And it's not about Jesus. Well, for some it is, but for most and for us, it truly became a time to reflect on the year, on family, and what's important. To slow down, to make time for each other, to think about others and bring joy to others. We loved spending time with our family and new friends. We felt normal. We enjoyed all the things we were told were evil and were met with more happiness and joy than we could ever imagine. It truly is the most wonderful time of the year. And for the first time, we were a part of it. I know this isn't for everyone, and many ex-JWs choose not to participate in these traditions, but after some of the hardest years of our lives, we were starting new traditions with our kids, and we were loving it. Over the months in our new home, the hardest part has been knowing that someday, everyone we had loved and held dear would eventually cut us off if we were honest. My husband has tried to reason with his mom, but she doesn't budge. She even said that she would need to limit association with our kids because she was assuming they would be celebrating holidays, and that would be a bad influence on her. My mom surprised me a little when I vaguely mentioned I was struggling. The kids slipped a little and mentioned birthdays, but she didn't miss a beat and didn't make them feel bad and engaged them briefly about it. Being a first generation Jehovah's Witness, she is used to dealing with normal family members, but I know this won't last forever. And the uncertainty of what our relationship will be is paralyzing for me. In addition to the fact that she won't stay with us if she comes to visit because of my husband's status. But I still can't be anything but heartbroken that these people I love and care about so much will want nothing to do with me. Seeing people unfollow me on social media, people I thought of as truly family, is heartbreaking. These loved ones are going off of rumors and assumptions. I don't want to sound petty, but this is tangible proof that I am already being shunned, already losing people important to me. The shunning has begun. I recently listened to a podcast that mentioned the different levels of shunning in the congregation, and it's so true. Oh, that person isn't the best association. Be careful around them. At its heart, that is shunning. I don't want to formally disassociate myself and give them a reason to stop talking to me. Why can't people walk away without losing those they love? Are Jehovah's Witnesses' faith so fragile that simply associating with those that don't believe will cause it to come crashing down? Why can't we just agree to disagree and say that the topic of religion is off limits? This is the naivety of me coming out again. One of my dad's catchphrases was, "Why can't we all just get along?" Maybe part of me still longs for the promise of paradise when we were all supposed to be perfect and get along and love each other. Part of me wants that to be true. I'd say that my husband and I are agnostic and strive to be respectful of others' beliefs. We are trying to instill in our kids respect, and we are trying to instill that in our kids that we just don't know. We are open to finding truth, but unsure if we are able to find it in this lifetime. Instead of focusing on what we don't know, we focus on what we do know. We know that we have this time today, right now, and it is precious. As I learned as a young girl, life can change in an instant, and you never know when the last time will be when you can tell someone you love them. To not take anything or anyone for granted. To be kind, loving, accepting, and perhaps ironically, to treat others the way you want to be treated. It's been more than a few hours and still nothing from my friend. My heart's been breaking, knowing that this is how the majority will treat me. My heart aches because they genuinely believe that I am throwing my life away, and this is how I believed too when I was in their shoes. So I understand where they are coming from and how hard it is for them too. They want me to wake up and come back, but I'm already awake. And in this new life, we've met some amazing people. I never believed in meant to be or that something happens for a reason, but I'm starting to. There have been people that I have needed to enter into my life at the exact moment they do. So while I'm heartbroken over those that choose to leave me in my life, I'm grateful for the ones that choose to enter it and stay in it. I'm trying to focus on that as we're moving forward, but it's not easy. It's been about 2 years since my wake-up call, and I'm still struggling with these feelings. I may struggle the rest of my life with these feelings, but you know who won't? My kids. They may not end up being close to their grandparents and the extended family, but they won't ever question their parents love them unconditionally. They won't ever have to live in fear that we won't accept them for their life choices. They will know we are their biggest cheerleaders and always, always have their backs. This is all for them. All this pain we face now is so that they don't have to face it themselves in the midst of this, quote, loving organization, end quote. I'm no one special. My story isn't unique, and honestly, there are others that have experienced far worse than I have. I have experienced things that I haven't shared here, partly because I'm not ready to share them, and partly because it would take some of my anonymity away. I am also afraid that I may be leaving things out unintentionally, but I'm sharing this part of my story because I think it's important to understand that we're not alone. At times, I still feel alone, so I'm thankful to Allie for this outlet and resource to share and find strength and kindness, love, and acceptance. My wish to anyone listening is that they find comfort and peace as they move forward into the unknown. Thank you for listening. Thank you so much, June, for sharing your story. I've had the privilege of having a few little short conversations with her, and just from the brief exchange I've had with her, I think you, June, are just a survivor, a strong lady, goofy, so fun, obviously an awesome mother, and you've come through a lot. And the one thing I can say about June is that she loves her family fiercely, including those who are still inside. Unconditionally, she loves them. And I really appreciate in your story how you share where you are with your beliefs. And I hope anybody listening to this story knows that this is a safe space to share where you are when you are there. This is not about any of us forcing each other to come to any dogmatic, specific conclusion about anything religious, spiritual, secular, etc. And my heart just goes out to you. I think another thing that shows that we are all coming from something not normal and not healthy, that being the Jehovah's Witness organization, is the fact that you have to move states to get a fresh start. That you can't just, like she said in the beginning of her story, like, why can't we just say, hey, I don't believe this anymore, and just talk about anything else but as we all know, as former Jehovah's Witnesses, that is not a possibility. And just thinking about the struggles you went through when your husband was disfellowshipped and you were still attending meetings, I can specifically relate to that. So in the beginning of my marriage, 16 years ago, we started off marriage both being disfellowshipped, but my husband got reinstated before I did. And so I was disfellowshipped for 3 months while he had been reinstated. And that was literally the worst 3 months of my life, because I would have to go out in the parking lot and sit in the car because he would get love bombed and bombarded by everybody in the congregation because it was a new congregation for him. It was the congregation I grew up in. So everyone was like, they wanted to meet my now reinstated husband. And isn't that so ridiculous how a 2-second announcement from a Kingdom Hall platform all of a sudden gives people permission to start being human with someone? So I would go in the car and cry and cry and cry. And then, of course, we would go home, and it's like, how are we supposed to be a united couple serving Jehovah when I'm being treated like a leper, and my husband, which I was happy for him, gets reinstated? It was just really, really messed up. And it is a terrible formula that these elders are doing to young couples who may be in this situation right now, for them to be united. Like, if a married couple is one flesh, why does one get reinstated and the other doesn't? So I can totally imagine how painful that was for your family during that time. And it reminds me of a cartoon that has some humor, but behind it, it's very, very serious. And I'll put it up as like the cover picture for this video, but it's Jesus with a little lamb on his shoulder that he had obviously gone and found, and the rest of the flock with like the big elder sheep in the front are like, whoa, 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 he's not lost, we kicked him out. Like, that's how it is in that organization. And this is why so many people are waking up and leaving, which takes a lot of courage than to just stay inside and keep the status quo. So I hope that you're loving life, loving life and enjoying what you can with your beautiful children where you are. Thank you so much, June, for sharing your story.